Hello and most welcome to another fun lecture in the H series. 1933, the year when Schrödinger and Dirac received a shared Nobel Prize in Physics. It is in this very time, the 20s, where everything happened, and we pointed especially out the year 1927. After that, the Nobel Prizes start streaming in. It goes on during the 30s, and already by the start of the war, quantum mechanics is forgotten. And it remained forgotten until now, really, where more Nobel Prizes are streaming in. Last year, with Alan Specht, Klaus Singer, and Zeilinger, was very decisive. It's a big turn for humankind, I'd say. The understanding that comes from quantum mechanics is the most important breakthrough ever happened to humanity. And it's also the savior of the world, of our souls. It's not a small thing. It's a little bit like the understanding of Heraclitus come true, the coincidence of oppositions. But we will not continue with Hao Tang, Wittgenstein, and the dualism of the inner and the outer. It was a rather small lecture last time. It was one big point. The point is that a nothing is the same as a something of what we can say nothing. As something with no understanding or no facts, observations or anything is the same as a nothing. This is very equal to the understanding of quantum mechanics, where we learn the moon does not exist or doesn't matter if we cannot see, perceive, check it or anything like that. It is not simply there. No, it's dependent on our observation. I think something happened to the screen. I can no longer see the text color.
Strange, you should be able to see it. I don't know. What should we do? Stop share and I share it again.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see what has happened. This is that share. Do you see it?
You might want to check once more how you share, so you're really sharing the right page.
No, yes, I'm sharing. This is I can now close this one. But, is Mirja able to see the screen of Tang's?
Nothing.
What about Mirja? Okay, I don't know. Hear her, but I cannot do anything.
Yes, I'm there.
Do you see the screen?
I could see the screen, yes. Yes.
So this depends on Hans. Hans, the fault is with yours then.
Okay.
I am fine also listening to his voice. I'm fine.
But if you see the screen, but you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So Hans, the fault is with your computer.
Do you see the text, Mirja?
Only the top. I see.
Ah, you don't see any text. Okay.
Now I see it's, yeah, moving.
The abstract, yes.
Yes, the abstract, exactly.
So everything is normal, Hans.
Okay. Well, we continue then. I have a written copy of the text here, so I continue with that one. So the point of last time was nothing is the same as a something that we cannot say anything about. There was also another secondary interesting thing. It is that the senses, what we call the inner core of ourselves, are not divided from the conceptual. So that we have a dualism with an inner core of something pure, non-conceptual, and then as we grow, we learn concepts, and it somehow gets affected by the concepts. Rousseau might even say it got tainted, darkened. This, of course, has a connection to nothing and something we cannot say anything about. And we see that in the quote from PI, page 76. I'm going to acronym them to 76. And yet again and again reach the conclusion that the sensation itself is a nothing. Not at all. It is not a something, but not a nothing either. So there you got it, the zest of it. And now I think you get a widening understanding of the private object. The idea that we have one equals a nothing or a something we cannot say anything about. And I continue with the last paragraph on page 76. We need to add humor to this as well. The first half of the paradox is therefore really a rejection of the idea of privacy, while the second half is a straightforward rejection of behaviorism. Behaviorism. There is no real paradox or contradiction, but rather a simultaneous rejection of a pair of opposite ideas. That is, the paradox is really a rejection of both horns of a false dilemma. The idea of privacy and the idea of behaviorism. Behaviorism.
Behaviorism. Behaviorism.
Good old B.F. Skinner. Sorry. Now, in paragraph 304b, Wittgenstein urges us to make the paradox disappear. Disappear. Disappear.
Disappear. Disappear.
It is most plausible to read this in a therapeutic spirit, that is, as urging us to dissolve the paradox or false dilemma. But it is extremely obscure how Wittgenstein's prescription, namely rejecting the idea that language function only to convey thoughts, is supposed to help the false dilemma.
Dissolve the false dilemma.
Dissolve the dilemma, the dilemma. Dissolve it. A common mistake here is to read him as urging attention to the contrast between talk about inner objects and talk about outer objects. Outer objects.
Outer. Outer. Outer.
This reading seizes on the first two items on his list of thinkable things: houses, pains, good and evil, or anything else you please. You please. And takes him to be warning us against treating other objects,
Outer. Outer. Outer.
which on this reading he makes houses to stand in for, as models for understanding inner objects, which on this reading he makes pains to stand in for it.
Pains.
But this is really a careless reading of the text. For Wittgenstein is plainly not contrasting houses and pains, as that would make no sense of his mention of good and evil, let alone his inclusion of anything else you please.
Please.
You please. A fortiori, he is not contrasting houses and pains as standing in for the outer and the inner, respectively, as several readers have in fact claimed. The truth is that Wittgenstein is not contrasting any of the listed items at all, because it is an open list.
Open.
Open list. A list that includes anything you please. Anything you please. Anything you please.
Please, please.
Rather, what he is contrasting here is one function of language, namely to convey thoughts, which with its other function or functions, of which we are to remind ourselves here. But what other function or functions of language should we recall? The decisive step here is to realize that the function of language to convey thoughts is precisely its intellectual function. So Wittgenstein is urging us to recall non-intellectual function of language.
Language.
Language. Language. This decisive point has been a common blind spot of commentators on paragraph 304b. Because the differences they take Wittgenstein to be urging attention to are usually still within the intellectual function of language. Language. What non-intellectual function or functions of language should we recall them to dissolve the false dilemma between a private inner and a behavioristic outer. Outer, Skinner. Outer, outer. With a decisive clue, non-intellectual, it is not hard to find an answer. We need only to think of non-intellectual functions of language in connection with sensation, the topic of paragraph 304A. One function stands out here, which I shall call for lack of a real name, the expressive function of language. Recalling this function provides a key to dissolving the false dilemma, though it is not the only key possible. By the expressive function of language, I mean a kind of linguistic expression that contrasts with a most fundamental function of language, namely description. Description. Description.
Description. Sweet description.
This contrast must be kept in mind to prevent possible confusion, because there is a well-established sense of express that is nearly identical to describe. Look out! Do not confuse. This sense is at work in such statements as he expressed his view on the matter very articulately. Articulately.
Articulately. Articulately.
Where one may use described instead. This kind of expression may be called expression of one's intellectual states. In contrast, the kind of expression I have in mind may be called expression of one's sensuous state, in particular of one's affective states.
Affective.
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 Affective. This is a quite special kind of linguistic expression, hence the subscript. Its character will come out from the following examples, where in means in expression of. List A. This is funny. Saying ouch in pain.
Ouch.
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 Saying yuck in disgust.
Yuck. Yuck.
Yuck. Yuck. Saying wow in astonishment.
Wow.
Saying help in desperation. Saying how help. Very good. Saying how blue the sky is in enchantment or in surprise.
How blue the sky is.
Saying that's very nice of you in gratitude or in sarcasm.
That's very nice of you.
That's very nice of you. All of these utterances exemplify the expressive function of language, though they do so to varying degrees. This is because they, as listed are increasingly articulate or involve increasing degrees of intellectual participation. Participation.
Participation. Participation.
More generally, and going beyond this list, there is a rich and enormously variegated continuum of cases in which the expressive and the intellectual functions of language are both present. Indeed. Now, attention to the most primitive cases of the expressive function of language, that is, cases near the top of list A. Gives us a key to dissolving the false dilemma. This is because these cases enables us to see squarely and vividly the immediate and natural unity of the inner and outer. For instance, the immediate and natural unity of a cry of pain. Ouch! Ouch!
Oh, ouch. Ouch.
Run from someone punch in the face and the pain he feels. Once we vividly and firmly have such natural unities in view, the dualism of a private inner and a behavioristic outer simply evaporates.
Evaporates. Evaporates.
Indeed.
Evaporates.
Well done, Hao Tang. This dissolution of the false dilemma by appeal to certain natural unities is, I think, ultimately a genuine one. Genuine one.
Genuine.
Genuine one. But at this point, it may well strike the skeptic as unconvincing, even naively so. It seems incredible that such a difficult issue as the idea of privacy and behaviorism can be made to evaporate just like that. By a simple stroke.
Punch.
The phenomena appealed to seem too thin and too incidental to bear much philosophical weight. Wait,
Wait.
wait a minute. Wait a minute,
Wait.
for a second, for a bit more. Wait.
Wait. Wait.
This, this skepticism is strictly speaking only a feeling, not an argument.
Feeling. Feeling.
Still, this feeling is not wrong. It is a gut level registration of a fact that must be accounted for. Namely, that it is difficult in philosophy to recall these natural unities to mind, and even when reminded of them, to attach much significance to them. Significance.
Significance. Significance.
Significance. Later, I shall explain why this is difficult after the necessary context has been put in place.
Yes.
For now, I shall concentrate on gaining a firm hold on the positive insight glimpsed here. Glimpsed.
Positive. Positive.
This is the insight that in overcoming the dualism of the inner and the outer, it is crucial to pay attention to certain natural primitive unities. But a simple appeal to these unities is unlikely to be effective because the phenomena appealed to have so far appeared only in isolation without the benefit of a wider context. Context. Context.
Context. Context. Sweet context.
In other words, the insight glimpsed is still fragile.
Fragile. Oh no, fragile.
To make it robust, the supporting context must be brought out.
Robust. Robust.
Brought out. Brought out.
Brought out.
Where does the supporting context lie? A good way to search for it is to raise the diagnostic question. What is really generating the dualism of the inner and the outer? What is it? What may it be? Pushing us toward the false dilemma between a private inner and a behavioristic outer.
Outer.
Wittgenstein's answer is to this extent clear. The cause of dualism has to do with the idea that the only function of language is to convey thoughts. Which idea may be called the intellectualist conception of language. Oh dear! but it is obscure in the extreme how this intellectualism is involved in the etiology of the dualism. Before we can properly answer this question, however, much stage setting is needed. Above all, we need to gain a more detailed understanding of intellectualism about language.
Language.
Language. I think that could be a good summary point now when we are approaching a new chapter. We have page 18.
Language. Yes. Yes, it is page 80. Yes, there. 80. So,
So here we see Hao Tang proposing a solution to the one of the most complex problems in philosophy. That is the problem of private language. He is suggesting a fleeting or a floating transferal from the senses to the more intellectual. But his point is there is at no single distinct moment or point a sharp transferal from the senses to the intellectual. Instead, they are definitely constantly intertwined, never to be separated. Let's go for some quotes. And of course, we are repeating now more thoroughly what we did in the A episode 1932. We have a hint on page 77. And this is a mistake most interpreters of Wittgenstein do. A common mistake here, that's the third paragraph, is to read him as urging attention to the contrast between talk about inner objects and talk about outer objects. That is not, it is in general his point, but it has subtleties that are lost with most interpreters of Wittgenstein. The very idea that we mistake external things like houses for internal things, objects, if you like pain. And as Hao Tang says, this is really a careless reading of the text. For Wittgenstein is plainly not contrasting houses and pains. as that would make no sense of his mention of good and evil, let alone his inclusion of anything else you please. It is, as seen in the fourth paragraph, an open list. It can include anything. It's not limited to houses or paints or anything like that. So therefore, he doesn't want to make a sharp distinction between pain or house. If we think that, we will be led astray. And on page 78, second paragraph, the second line from the bottom, he enforces a new word or a new meaning of a well-used word, the expressive function of language. The expressive function of language is to further bring out one's senses states, one's affective states to the fore, to bring those out, to let them shine forward. And the examples, they range from pain and going all the way to sarcasm. That's very nice of you. And of course, the expression that is very nice, so you seem to be so intellectual, but they're all expressions of affective states. And here we have one more, even more pertinent. The last sentence of the last paragraph on that page, 78. More generally, and going beyond this list, there's a rich and enormously variegated continuum of cases in which the expressive and the intellectual functions of language are both present. Both present. So they are interwoven. Maybe I would even suggest here, tentatively, not sure yet, so this is just a suggestion, it could be that they are inseparable, they are not two different things. Like the superposition of wave and particle, there literally is no difference in the superposition. Although the material expression of them are quite different. They are really not different. And if we go to page 79, once, and it's the last sentence of the first paragraph, once we vividly and firmly have such natural unities in view, the dualism of a private inner and a behavioristic outer simply evaporates. Evaporates! Hooray! It's a grand solution. One cannot say anything else. The things that have been plaguing Cartesius, Descartes, Austin, Sellers, Putnam, Deleuze, as we saw before, Hegel, without a doubt, Marx, seeing the spectres of Marx, plaguing, making thinking almost impossible, unbearable, and you are darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. There's no way of striding between Charybdis and Scylla. You will either end up in Platonism or materialism. And we know both those ways leads to paradoxes, unresolvable paradoxes. It's an intellectual quagmire. And last, we get a little hint here on page 80. Second paragraph, we need to make it more robust. It is an enormously helpful solution for a problem that everyone is plagued by. And I think it led to the conquering of the left hemisphere and the midnight state we have in intellectualism or academia today. So in the second paragraph of page 80, I can't see the text, but I hope you are showing it up for the others. Where does the supporting context lie? A good way to search for it is to raise the diagnostic question. What is really generating the dualism of the inner and the outer, pushing us toward the false dilemma between a private inner and a behavioristic outer? Wittgenstein's answer is to this extent clear. The cause of the dualism has to do with the idea that the only function of language is to convey thoughts, which idea may be called the intellectuous conception of language. Well, this is just incredible, and it needs to be reinforced. It's now obvious language's sole purpose is not to convey thoughts. It's not the thought conveyor. It's not a motorway or a highway for extending thinking. Not even close. I would say there is no causal connection whatsoever. They can occur simultaneously, yes, something we've gone through with Francis Y. Lynn and especially Flick and Edmund Dane. Paul Johnston also wrote about that. But this is incredibly important. This is a big blow at the dualism that is haunting our every thinking part. Kalle Lundahl, more than welcome to join.
Thank you, thank you. So there is a dualism in intellectual language, and so the intellectual language is the problem according to Wittgenstein, and also that was the view of Feuerabend, the paper that we went through most recently, and in the early Wittgenstein in Tractatus, he imitated scientific language, and that's also the problem of modern academia. They imitate the scientific language while they lack what Wittgenstein, the late Wittgenstein prefers, namely that language should be expressive. Language should be expressive, and that is highlighted here.
Yeah, it's expressive. Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Yes, so we had that. Where did we have the word expressive? Expressive. Here. So this is, so we could say this dichotomy, intellectual language and expressive language. And then I think this is what Wittgenstein wants. He wants language to be expressive. And today in academia, to write a paper with expressive language is more or less forbidden. Here you have examples of expressive language, the interactions. And for the great linguists of today, say Chomsky, or the late Austin or Saussure,
Yes, indeed.
they would be, let us say, they would view interactions as parasitic.
Yeah.
Of course, and we remember the Austin. He had a theory about, for instance, the Marriage Act. Hans, could you repeat what he thought about the Marriage Act, where you say, I take you as a wife and so forth? How was... this is the wrong Austin. Like a philosopher.
Theater and wedding acts and calling judgments in a court. That were not true speech acts. They were merely copies.
See, 1960 philosopher.
It's a sort of false division that doesn't have anything to do with what really happens in language. You could call the expressive the superposition, maybe.
Indeed, here you have this. Let me see. Austin had this phrase like "I promise to do so and so." So that is what you have in like in marriage acts. I take you as a wife, for instance, and that is a very intellectual act.
Yeah.
Because there is a judge present there or a priest, and this priest, he doesn't really care what you think. He doesn't really care.
No.
Because in this act, he needs all to make the official judge document. So in official contexts, there's always this intellectual aspect of language. You have the judge, the priest as a judge. So it's nothing. So in this context, for instance, the simple yes, I take you as a wife, is actually not an interaction, but is what I don't know what a linguist would call a yes in that context. Is it an interaction formally?
Yeah, what Austin is like, it seemed that in these particular instances, like a court, there seemed not to be an expression of the thought. So the judge doesn't think I sentence you. He's just following a sort of ritual, and it's parasitic. And Austin was not happy at all with those things. I think he was especially...
And in these cases...
He was especially miffed with theater.
Yes, please continue. Yes, indeed.
He especially
But let
did
me
not
return
like
to
theater.
this.
It's a bit like Socrates or Plato that didn't like theater either, or any art.
Yes, indeed. They are only mimicking the real things. Now, let's say in a marriage, for instance, a yes there in that act is an adverb, linguistically speaking. But Wittgenstein would look to have the yes there as an expressive word, not like an adverb, but as an interjection. Yes. But my official acts actually forget they don't want this yes to be an interjection, but they want it to be an adverb, so to say. Intellectual adverb. And in some countries, of course, marriages can be arranged, even forced. And in this case, you could imagine the father who has forced the marriage. He could actually, you see, in this case, we shouldn't make fun of these serious things, but I think it's to illustrate the point.
It is a great point that's coming here. I slowly beginning to understand what he means with the expressive function. It's not a descriptive function. You just express something. You get pain, you get hit in the face, and you say, ouch! But
or in the marriage
where
act.
is the difference? Because you go all the way from ouch, yuck, wow, help, and how blue the sky is. And then you end up in, that's very nice of you. And that's very nice of you seem to be expressing a thought, doesn't it? Whereas ouch is just a reaction, a conditioned reaction.
No, but let's say you have a forced marriage, and father gives a punch in the stomach, in the face. He doesn't. It will probably then be an expressive yes. A forced yes, but it's not not an adverb there in that case.
No.
Not an intellectual adverb. But still, I think Austin would think this is as a parasitic in some way.
Yeah, he wouldn't like it. The reason he doesn't like it and everyone else don't like it is because there doesn't seem to be a clear expression of a thought. And I saw it that way. I think absolutely everyone else does. That when you speak, it's an expression of a thought somehow. That the thought is the original, and then you have the words coming out of you. But a marriage act, as you say, or a judge, doesn't seem to have that true connection. It's more following a ritual. Or
Yes, including the priest. Okay, he might have a talk before the marriage. Democracies like Sweden, but other countries, they wouldn't care perhaps about that. But if there is law, so it's only about the official yes should be only an adverb or there should be. He doesn't care about the sentiments. So it's as Wittgenstein or as Tang says that it's about the intellectual aspect of the language. But let us. I will give my. We can perhaps give the word to Mirja. I don't know.
Yeah, Mirja, please come.
Sorry?
Do you want to say something about something specific in this text?
It's only just like a thought. I have just come back home. Thank you for your expose and Hans's expose as well. I was thinking about the statement that you mentioned on the marriage. And then I'm thinking of Plato and this anti-theatrism that in play that he talks about in also relation to mimesis. And I'm
Yes.
thinking also, I'm just like the first thoughts that are coming, maybe it's affirmative, right? The statement, but it's imitation. You just
Yeah,
repeat something by a formula, right?
yeah,
And
very
that's
good. Yeah.
making it anti-theatrical in the same time.
Indeed.
You know, theatrical, and then the anti-theatrical element that I see in it. I don't you just like come up with the thoughts to this.
Very good. It's exactly what's bothering Austin and so many other. It's parasitic. It's not. Some people would even say, like Rousseau, it's not natural. It's staged. It's fake. It's theater
Yeah,
or
yeah.
movie. It was that somebody remarked to J.R.R. Tolkien in some talk that, oh, I do like that chap, what he's writing, but most of it is made up. And maybe, I don't know yet, we don't know what Hao Tang is coming to. Maybe it could be that that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And that needs to be explained further. You need to go into that more wider, because maybe it doesn't make sense really. Because if you say something, you say something. It doesn't have to be connected to a thought, an origin, or anything like that. So yeah, very good. Thank you very much, Miriam.
And it's also, you know, I'm thinking like in this sense, the imitation is also let's call it on the side of the audience is like what would be the right word I'm missing in English? Deceptive. It's pulling it into
Yes,
something like
deceptive. Yeah, it's not true.
yeah.
It's not true. It's not honest. Yeah, very good. What a great comment. Thank you very much, Mirja, and thank you, Kalle
Thank you,
Lundahl.
Hans.
And the message is that we need more punches, and we need the real words are the interjections, and they are not parasitical. They are the juice of the language. We need more
Yes,
punches
they
in
are
the face.
definitely, the words are important. They do make a difference and they are part of the real world. Why, thank you very much. Have a very pleasant morning, day, or afternoon, wherever you are. Bye bye for now.